Hello my friends, welcome to another episode of Warhammer 40,000 Inquisitor Martyr. My name is Wilfred. So as promised, I would like to share with you a guide on playing a Psyker. And this Psyker is the one that I've been playing since Season 7. You may have seen a lot of videos that I've posted as well. So do check out those videos if you'd like to see a little bit of how this Psyker perform or played like in other in the scenarios in the game. So now this Psyker is the strongest character that I've built in this game so far after more than 700 hours of playing this game, and but it's also the most complex character to play. So it is a bit of high risk, high return. May not be your cup of tea, but if you do try out this build, I believe you'll be very much delighted with the end result that you will see. So in this video, I'll be sharing with you the build, the skill that I've used, the passive, and the tips and tricks on some of this, like a mechanic, as well as the gear and stats and so on. So I'll put a time code below in case you want to jump to a certain session and just look for those areas that you're interested in. As always, do check out the pinned comments below because I may miss out some of those points, and I may want to correct some of these points as well as the season comes by. Yeah, do drop me a note below as well if you want to ask a little bit more question on how to play this game. But as always, because this game is a sandbox ARPG, so it is to inspire, not to prescribe. You don't need to follow exactly all these stats that I use, the gear that I use as well. You can build your Psyker similar to the one I have, maybe even better, to use certain loot that you may have that I don't, and to balance some of the stats that you may feel that's more suitable for your playstyle. Maybe you are more into offensive, less on defensive, or vice versa. So it is really it's a sandbox. Do try out anything that you like, and of course, if you discover something new, do drop me a note below for me to discover. Try out as well as one of the seasons in the future. Now, this Psyker is Unhinged, Enraged, and Hit, and there are multiple strength for this build. First thing and foremost is it has a very, very high clearance speed. It is the highest I've got for all the characters I've played so far. It has a very decent area damage and also good single target as well. So it covers almost all the scenarios that I played, be it as against a single boss with no ads or just a screen full of mobs. It is effective in high mission level as well. It's important because in order to farm a higher level gear, item level 90 and above, by right you should be doing level more than 100. So level 110 would be a very good place for you to farm the gear as well. It passed the test of the Unholy Cathedral as the best score that I've got for all my characters so far. If you play the Supreme Mission, if you play the Void Crusade and would like to master it for all mission cover, for all info fragment as well as all the keys, you can reach the Supreme Mission in less than an hour or thereabout. So that is a pretty decent effort as well. It could be shorter if you want to skip some of this mission once you get enough keys to just go for the Supreme Mission. And you cannot stand still. It's a very high mobility. It may be appealing to some, may not be to others, but this build requires to constantly dashing, constantly moving around. Why? Because because of the unhinged gameplay that I will go through in just a bit, there are a lot of anomalies that you will spawn that will definitely destroy the character if you just stand still, do nothing, basically, because it will just keep destroying you. So and you have to rebuff yourself regularly as well. So now, when it comes to Psyker, what is Unhinged? And that goes with the warp hit level. And it's very unique because for other ARPG I've so far played many ARPG, usually it requires you to have a basic power, to generate resources, to have some big hitting power, cooldown, and so on. That's usually the normal design or channel, the normal design of a lot of ARPG. This game, for Psyker, they flip the other way. You can have as many crazy damage as you want, but then you take a penalty for having those damage. And you could have up to a certain kind of like a blessing or buff that you have, but then that would reserve the warp hit that you have. Basically, there are 3 levels of warp hit: the Save, the Imperial, and Unhinged. the green zone, the yellow zone, as well as the red zone. So the higher that you go into, the more anomalies that will spawn, and the more harmful those anomalies will be. And the interesting part about this game is that Unhinged Psyker is not the only way to play a Psyker. You can play a saver Psyker as well. So there are perks that will support, like, if you cross to Imperial and bring it back to green, and it's sort of like, when you cross a level, it does different thing, or being invulnerable, and it's kind of interesting as well. That kind of reward you to have a little bit more safe kind of gameplay, but a bit more defensive. This guide talk about Unhinged. That's right. So I don't care about warp hit. I just maximize it or push it all the way to max, and I deal as much damage I would like to my heart's content. So that is why this game, this build is very, very exciting. Enraged. Now, in this game, when it comes to end game, you can either build your character as Enraged or Berserker. There's no hard and fast rule. I prefer Enraged because it's a little bit safer, because my Psyker is already pretty high risk. So Enraged is a state that once you earn the token, you gain 8% of damage increase, and the more token that you have, the higher that you get. And I think for my Psyker, they're about 29-30 is what I've got, and that's quite an insane amount of damage bonus to that. How do you acquire Enraged token? There are multiple ways, and again, it depends on your gear that you've got. I prefer gaining the Enraged token through crit hit, because even if there is no enemy around me, just a big boss, I can still earn Enraged token for a very long fight. It can be on kill as well, or on hit taken. So I don't prefer to take so much hit. So again, it's not a preferred option, but sometimes you may not have a choice because you don't have a gear that support it. But last but not the least, I prefer to convert all my damage type to hit. You don't have to do that. You could actually stay with hit and also increase your crit in another meaningful way. I'll talk a little bit about the options later. But I found that by converting all damage to hit will open up more possibility for you to try out other physical damage type, other warp damage type, to just mix around with the build, and you feel that you are still strong, although you are mixing all the physical and hit and warp damage all in one, but because all are being converted to hit, and it will get buffed by the hit as well. Okay, now how do you play this Psyker build? So you need two weapons. So one weapon will be all the defensive kind of skills that I'll go through in just a bit. Another weapon, we have two set of power. One is blessing, so 3 blessing, and 2 sort of defensive and offensive kind of skill scenario wise. You don't have to pop them, but if you need a little bit more protection, a little bit more attack, then you pop them as well. So you have to constantly switch between the two weapons to rebuff yourself every 90 seconds. Of the two other skills that I talk about, the defensive as well as the offensive, Doom and Inferno, you can pop it whenever you feel that you want to. And there will be AoE for you with the cooldown as well. So you got Hell, you got Firestorm, and you can pop them as and when you require. Extermination is a core skill that would be dealing the highest DPS among all of them, so keep doing it. When there is a single target, or sort of like, you see a group of elite there getting burned, and then you can use combustion, and combustion will burn them for 1000% damage bonus. It's a huge one. So looking at the score sheet, combustion is very low, but then when you burn them and then do a combustion, it will explode and then die. Very, very nice. And of course, don't forget, keep dashing or teleporting. There are two ways for you to move around, and I'll go through the pros and cons of these two. Okay, now when it comes to psychic power, when you can set up onto your weapon, I prefer 4 of them, and you can have more or less, up to you, depending on your trade-off and so on. So the 4 that I've chosen are Extermination, Firestorm, Combustion, as well as Hell. Now the the tiles, the little kind of like runes that I picked up, I don't know how to call it, but I call it runes, like increase power effectiveness, add vulnerability type, and also increase area of that effect by 25% and so on. Those are the ones that you could open up by using your passive skill points. So you can put some skill points in that I would like to learn how to add a shock to the power, like the Firestorm. Again, the reason why I set it up that way is that extermination is my highest damage output. I would like to put some vulnerability to it because it's usually very effective when it comes to hit vulnerability against a target. Firestorm is for me to shock because I like to play a little bit of shock build. I have some stats that will increase damage output to shock enemies, and also I've got a Psalm Doctrine whereby when I shock that enemy get destroyed, then it will then deal the killing blows damage around the target. So a little bit of like extra AOE to the area, and also so that is the reason why I put the shot and also vulnerability as well. Armor breaking is important. I highly recommend you to put one of the top power that has an armor breaking to it, at least one of the power. So I put it on combustion as well as hell, because I usually open up the whole attack with hell. And combustion is like, whether I do it or not, it depends. And usually I'm doing it against the bosses, and bosses most of the time will have armor there, so armor breaking is kind of important. And then you can mix around with kind of like, maybe you want to put a slow there, maybe you want to reduce the cooldown reduction, up to you. That's how you play around with it. So now, if you take a look at the from extermination to Firestorm to combustion to hell, which is the rock power, all these DPS are being augmented with the hit bonus, but not the last one. So when you read the last one, 1582, in fact it should be read as more than 2000 DPS, because the warp damage will be converted using my weapon into hit, and that will have another there about 25% increase on DPS. So the DPS is not bad for hell. It's interesting. But do you need to go through the conversion? You don't have to. But having a conversion allow you, like I said before, experimenting other damage type while you still have a decent damage output. Now, for the setup number 2, which is second weapon, I would suggest you have Endurance, Fiery Form, as well as Misfortune as the blessing. And you need to bless yourself every 90 seconds. So I usually look at my timer. When it go down to there about 20 seconds or 10 seconds, I'll rebuff myself. Rebuff usually takes 10 seconds to go through. You have to tap it to a second weapon, apply 1, 2, and 3, and tap it back. And usually the whole process takes around 10 seconds. You can walk while you buff yourself as well. So I usually just save some time, walk while I'm buffing myself. But it is important. I prefer to have higher HP generation and suppression generation and so on. Just make sure that I get a little bit protected, and also damage, base damage as well when my blessing is active. So I think it's important. And I picked the Doom and Inferno. Doom helped me to mitigate some of this damage that I received by range. So I think it is rather useful. But it only lasts for 15 seconds out of the whatever cooldown reduction I have got so far. Inferno is the one that will chase around is a column of fire that will chase around the enemy around me. It's not very targetable. It doesn't really target on the highest threat target. So I'm alright. It's alright to have one of these guys running around. And also it deal weapon damage, so it doesn't necessarily translate to a really insane amount of DPS, but it's good to have a little bit layer there for the Inferno to chase around. Right now, when it comes to passive and attribute, I'm not going to go through each and every kind of a passive that I've got here, because when you play this game and you experience the game and passive, it becomes very intuitive anyway. So the one I have a yellow dotted box around it are the one that I will open up until I get the final note. And usually what it means is that you will get majority of the notes inside the tree. There are notes that I would not pick, and I think you can think about that, because all these are situational. It may mean something to you, may not, but I think it's very intuitive. So feel free to experiment. You can always reset your passive as and when you want to. The cost is very low. Just keep buying the token if you feel that you are doing a lot of like a theory crafting or build kind of augmentation. The only thing I'd like to point out is that under debuff, there's one note called castigation, and that note is the only note that you need to open up on that tree. It gives you 3% crit hit chance for every debuff effect on the target, so you can get quite a fair bit of debuff as well. So I highly recommend that. That one is the only one I would like to call out. The rest of it, I believe you know what you're doing, and you should just pick up anything that you feel that you need and benefit your build. For psychic debuff and psychic combat, again, only open up those nodes that you will use. You don't need to open up everything. There's no major kind of like benefit when you do that. So I don't do it. I don't necessarily need to do that. All right. So need not to say, for all character in this game, I always recommend health, defense, suppression. These are the three core trinity that you should build your character. It will make your character very strong and more durable and also stronger. From an attribute point of view, is force resilient followed by side focus. The good thing about this is that unless you can open up to the 4th tier of side focus, it's not really necessary for you to acquire that many attributes. And it's a good news because sometimes attribute is very hard to acquire. I get it, and you have to use a lot of ancient, and this build sometimes require you not to have too many ancient. You have many ancient, of course, but there's some slot that may be better if you don't have ancient. You have the Archaeotech Relics, which is a red type of weapon or gear, so it's good. You don't have to max up because there's no benefit for this build to go anything further on your focus, unless you can get to the 4th tier, but that will require you to make a lot of sacrifices that probably is not desirable. All right. Perks wise, again, I've got a video in the past when it comes to damage. Say for example, I run a mission, right? I can pick different kind of damage, or some of them could be movement speed increase and so on. I don't really find noticeable difference between the various kind of perks, because a lot of time you do need to travel around the map, and sometimes those take up more time than the actual combat, if you think about that. Or basically, somehow the perk doesn't give you the kind of impact that you feel that you are so much faster. So I don't really see. I did experiment on that. I had video on that as a proof. So I wouldn't think too hard about which of the damaging buff that you should take. But what I like to propose is always look at utility buff. So as a Psyker for this build, I found myself pretty fragile sometimes. So I picked the Blessing of the Saint Victorious as well as the Eternal Warrior. You can read it there yourself, but it does give you a little bit more tankiness, or a way to come back to life should that be a very, very big blow to your character. Stat priority wise, again, all these stats that you see there is before the buff, before the on mission, because when you go on mission, you turn you go for blessing, and then as you dealing damage and killing off enemy, you get buffed up as well. So this is unbuffed. I would always say that to excel in this game, you need to have a very good balance between offense and defense. And the resistance should be capped to 60% and above. And you should also prioritize prioritize a high crit chance and strength. Now, I could, in this build, in this guide, will push me to around 70 to 75% crit hit rating. Some of them can be behind the scene as well. I've seen my Psyker going up to going close to 90%, and that is with some sacrifice and trade-off. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But I think a good kind of like a good kind of ground to have is around 70%, 75% as a crit hit, and then you must have the crit hit strength to accompany with it, because if you don't have the crit hit strength, the tier of because the whole crit damage bonus will be on tier. If you hit a certain tier breaking point, then you go to the next tier and so on. So I would recommend 135 and above is a good, because you get last 2 tier will guarantee 300 to 400% of additional crit damage. I will stack the hit as well, because all my damage is being converted to hit, and also do check out your stats as well as you go on mission. You will be quite amused by the changes that you may have, because there are many buffs that you may see on the screen that you may not be following, but they are really good buff. Okay, now I found that the hunting gear is important, but having the right Psalm Doctrine as well as Archaeotech Shards, and more so on the Psalm Doctrine, it will make and break a build. In fact, I found that the Psalm Doctrine is so powerful that probably make the gear level or the gear less relevant. And sometimes it's a good thing because you want to experiment the build. You don't want to refarm all the gear as well. Maybe you could, but if the Psalm Doctrine is strong, then you can swap around pretty fast for you to play other kind of build that you have. Hit damage, you can have 125% hit damage for 4 Psalm codes. You can have the 75% if you use 3 Psalm codes as well, depending on how many slots that you want to go for. I found that the damaging aura 100% hit damage per second is helpful because I do stat on hit damage and 100% of it is good. And I'm experimenting in this season of a shock aura, meaning that killing a shock enemy will create explosion and cause shock around the enemy. So if you have a bunch of, say, elite standing around each other, the first one that get destroyed would then get explosion and spread shocks to the remaining kind of like elite and so on. So I think it's rather fun, but you don't have to do that. What you could do is swap out the shock and do more hit damage if so you wish to. But I strongly recommend you not to go too crazy over a Doctrine, but rather than say to put some on the Archaeotech Shard for 2 things. If your resistance is not capped, it's good to have all resist on some of the slot that you have, and also crit hit strength is very very important to get to the last 2 tier of the crit damage. There's a companion as well. There's a link there if you want to read more about the Psalm Doctrine and what you can pick. Feel free to do so. Okay, now the next part of the video is going through the gears I've got. If you see a star on the heading, it means that I think more or less I found the right affix or right enchant. They call it enchant in this game. So I'm going to from now on talk about enchant, not affix. But I think a lot of people who follow my videos on ARPGs, you may be more familiar with affixes. So I'm going to talk about the enchant here. First up is Neuro Implant. This is probably the only kind of slot that you have got to have. Well, one of the few slots that you must have the right enchant, which is to give you the enraged token on crit hit. That removes the dependency of having ads around you if you are facing just the big boss. It also removes the dependency on being have to get hit in order to get enraged token. So I would say get Archaeotech relics with the enraged token on crit hit, and then the rest of it you need to have 5 more enchants. So ideally you should have 6 enchants. With the first one is enraged token on crit hit. There are alternatives as well. The red dot means Archaeotech relics. The yellow dots means ancient relics. So depending on what you farm, but I find the other are quite interesting as well. But I will stick with what I have. But there are alternatives. Eye implants. I think mine is already pretty good because it gives me, for this stride eye implant, and whenever you see a stride, it's good if you are playing a crit build like mine or like many other characters build that you may have. The good thing about Strive is that it gives you a whole chunk of crit chance, crit hit strength, crit damage, plus the HP. So what else do you need? I mean, these are some of the best kind of like options that you have. But there are others kind of like alternative as well. I put it on the side. So if you found one of these alternative and haven't got a stride yet, it's okay. You can use it first, and then when you have a stride, and use a stride. Main implant, I would say this one is absolutely a very nice bonus to it, because if you add up to 10 to the maximum of the enraged token, and if you manage to get 10, that means that you increase the maximum token from 20 to 30. 10 tokens equivalent to 80% of damage bonus when you are enraged at the max. So I think that make your damage output so much better than even 6% damage bonus per enraged token, which is still not as good as you're having the maximum token being pushed to 30 instead of 20. So that is something that you should strive to farm. It is rough. Purity Shield also, I found that the Purity Shield don't really have a lot of like, I think mine is pretty alright. I'm not that excited over the feared state. The only good thing I think about this is that going back to the passive I've got, every every debuff I have against the enemy would also give another 3% of crit hit chance against the enemy. So not bad if you add a fear to it under certain condition. You can check out the companion as well. But there are other kind of alternative, and one that I would like to call out is that there's something called Focus State in this game. Focus State is increased HP as well as suppression regeneration. Could be good as well, because sometimes you may get a strip off of all suppression due to some kind of a mechanic. Okay, now focus. There's an equal sign there, meaning that there are multiple options, and all of them are good. So either way, if I found any one of these, I'm happy. So the one I've got is the Hysteria, which is for its chance for every 10 points of my current warp hit, which I think I have more than 100. That give me a very good chance of exploding the enemy on kill, dealing the killing blows damage. So that's not bad. I'm not too crazy over the rest of that, although I like the all resist a lot, because all resist is something that if I have it, I don't need to waste another slot to sort of add the all resist. That worth 2 gem slot, by the way, or 2 shard slot. But there are alternatives as well. The one that I really like and eyeing on and still farming is the crit hit chance in Enraged state. I think that is awesome, because I get another 12% on it if I'm not at my cap. Suppression damage bonus is also good against the bosses, because think about 40%. When the bosses hit into yellow zone, you deal 40% more damage, and that's always good. So that are the 3 kind of like options I've got. I think all of them are very good. Any one of them, I'm happy. You can also, in the event whereby you found that you do not need the extra kind of DPS layer, be it the Firestorm or Hell, you could craft yourself or farm yourself a Rosario Force Field. And this one will give you immunity to all damage, like invulnerability for 5 seconds. And that is also very good. I played this build on one of my previous season with a Psyker, and it's pretty decent. You can pop that before some of these like big room kind of damage coming up to you, and you're immune for 5 seconds. And on top of that, if you get one that's killing enemy, extend the duration of the field by 0.5 seconds up to 10 seconds, that's not bad. It's 15 seconds per pop, but you need a supply box to continue funding or fueling the force field. Okay, Inoculator. Inoculator is always one of the hardest thing to farm in this game, because the color you have to be matching. I'll take 2 red, 1 yellow, and 1 green. So my 2 red is to replenish my health, and also 75% of my suppression. Because once your suppression is stripped off, you may be knocked down as well. So it's very dangerous. I would have the yellow one, the steam. I would be having the increase to crit hit chance and crit hit strength as well. It's supreme, by the way, so it's good. And the green one is the cooldown reduction of Inoculator. But all in all, I think when it comes to Inoculator, the one I have is pretty decent. It's very defensive, because I get a HP and suppression gain, 100% of the killing blows damage. So that is good. But of course, it's probably no use against the boss if there's no S around it. But against all other map, but sometimes the danger part is that when you have a lot of enemies, especially with the tarot card, you may have extra champions or extra kind of like elite and so on. That will make it a lot easier to survive. But there are alternatives as well, as I said. Okay, when it comes to armor, and I feel that there are many options there, and it's good, because all of these could be good options. I picked the one that extends the slow shot effect duration. Not necessarily like that the orange text there, or the whatever color text there, but what I really like is the supreme crit hit chance and then crit hit strength against the slow shot and stun enemy. And that's pretty awesome, because supreme crit hit chance means that you can go beyond the cap. And if I'm dealing 70-75 kind of crit damage, crit hit against the enemy, there's 5% more to it. So why not, right? So that is the reason why I like this armor. I stay with this armor. But there are other things as well. For example, if you want a higher damage reduction, like my character is not capped at damage reduction, and that's good. 12% on a protected kind of like damage reduction will make you a little bit more durable. Triggering a Rosario force field is also very interesting, because it does give you the kind of like a tankiness as well. And so on. So I found that, and the reason why I like the trigger Rosario force field when stun or knockdown is because because one of the anomaly of the Unhinged Psyker is they mark the ground with a black marking. Sometimes it's super hard to see, and there is a beam from the top, and it will stun you, strip off of all your suppression. But if you have a force field that pop every time when it stun you, so that's all right, cool. Now, if you do not like to use the weapon to dash, you could actually use an Aether Walker armor, which is using the ethereal phasing for you to teleport. The difference between teleporting and dashing is as such. Teleport require there's a delay at the beginning of the teleport, and they're about 1 second. But it can teleport to longer distance, overcome some of the obstacle like on the floor. Dashing through the weapon is a lot more responsive, but then you may get blocked by some of these obstacles that you see on the screen as well. And also, if you use a dashing, you have two weapons, and two weapons come with 6 affixes on either side, right? So there are 12 affixes or enchants in total, and it comes with four kind of like a slot on either weapon as well. So you can put in 2 Psalm code Doctrine. There's up to 4 codes. However, if you use a teleport that is for the armor, then very likely you'll be using a 2-hand weapon as your weapon, and that would mean that you have 6 slots instead of 2 4 slots. So you can afford to have 6 codes together become a Psalm code Doctrine. I don't really find that helpful, useful, but you may want to try that out if you see some 6 code Doctrine that you like to use. And also it gives you altogether up to 6 affixes rather than 12 affixes or enchants. So I personally prefer the dashing, but you have to be aware of the obstacle ahead of you. I think the dashing will give you the best potential of the Psyker, but there are options as well. Now, signums. Unfortunately, I don't think I farmed the 2 signums that I really want. HP gain on crit hit is not going to be that fantastic because of the high health that I've got. It doesn't, and I don't really lose health most of the time. I found that dodge chance is good because dodge means you avoid all damage, so that is even better than damage reduction. Crit hit chance in enraged state is something that that's fantastic. Adding crit hit damage is also very nice. Adding vulnerability, general vulnerability is a vulnerability that is added on top of the hit vulnerability. That is also very nice, and so on and so forth. So there are many options there. I think that's what is fun, because you don't have to stick on the one that I've got. You can actually pick any other one below as well. Okay, weapon. This is a very interesting topic. I think I've already covered a little bit on that. On the dashing, and also now this assuming that you'll follow my build, which is the dashing. So the dashing come from the ether blade, which is on the right hand side. The one I've got is the best I've got. It's a level 100 item, level 100, cannot be better than that. And it has a 15% supreme hit chance, so it's add on top of the cap that you have. 60 is the cap, then can add up to 75%. And I've managed to roll a lot of good affixes like crit hit trance and crit hit strength and so on. So that is sorted. Now on the left hand side, there are 2 options. One is kinetic rod. Doesn't matter because I don't use the power at all. The difference between the 2 are, one is to convert all the damage into hit type. So that is kind of cool, because any other kind of like, you can bring in the warp hit damage type as well as the physical damage type. And you all can convert it into hit, so you can experiment and be very versatile, and also get a chance to burn as well. Remember, burn is it's an additional DOT damage over time that kind of aligned to what our build is. As a crit build, the damage over time is also very powerful. But also, when you go for combustion, then the enemy will get explode when they get killed. So that is really good as well. The other option is that go for another supreme crit hit chance, and that actually put me to close to 90% crit hit together with the blade, and that is also very nice, very good. So there's no hard and fast rule. I experimented the 2, kind of interesting. I think both are very effective, but pick the one that most suitable for you. I think the reason why I'm using the convert all hit type is also because of the rod that I have got. The one that has the supreme hit chance is only 5 affixes, is 5 enchants and not 6. So if as in when I got a 6 one, then I'll probably do a side-by-side comparison, but I don't know whether I'll get there or not. But it's good. So I'll highly recommend you to try those things out. But supreme crit hit chance is the one that you should be hunting for. That make this build shines. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoy this video guide. As always, I will put the more comments in the pinned comment, more thoughts around it if I have come around to it, or as I play other seasons in the future that may affect this build, I'll put it down as well. Feel free to drop any comment or question that you may have. I'm more than happy to answer you. So, yep, I'll see you next time. Bye.